recovery is hard either way, but you can make it a lot harder for yourself if you think that you have the answers. Like, the reality is, if you had the answers, you wouldn't be here. And then if I'm not vigilant, like you said, the thought of a drink or a drug to ease that dis-ease becomes really appealing really quickly.
I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me.
Hi everybody, Ron here from The Truth About Addiction. Today's guest is Ash. Ash has graced our presence, and I'm very happy and excited to have her on The Truth About Addiction. I mean that sincerely. You're doing great stuff. You know, I'm starting to get a little bit better at doing this podcast thing. I've done 100 and something now, so now I'm starting to. I used to just come in and not do any homework on the person. I just let it free flow.
Yeah.
But now I like to find out who we're having on and what they're about, and not qualify them, but just to see where they fit into the recovery world, because that's all we're doing. We're just carrying another message of hope. You know, I've done it. You can do it. Let's go. You know. So Ash, thank you very much. Tell us about Ash.
Oh, thank you so much, Ron. It is such a pleasure to be joining you here today. And, you know, it's always a privilege to be able to share a little bit of my story in the hopes that it might help somebody else out there who's listening, who might be struggling with their own addiction, or maybe they have a family member who is, or maybe they're in recovery. And, you know, as you and I both know, that involves a lot of ups and downs, swings and roundabouts. So it's really nice, I think, just to have that sense of identification. You know, it's why I go to regular meetings, and, you know, why I tune into podcasts like this. And yeah, so thank you so much for asking me to be here today. My name is Ash Butterss. I have a sobriety date, which is the 24th of February, 2020. You know, today I get to live a life that is really big and really beautiful, but that certainly wasn't my reality just a short while ago. I came into recovery through a rehab, which I never thought was going to be part of my story. Addiction within me was very progressive and insidious. And so what I mean by that was that for the best part of 2 decades, I really got away with a lot of my behavior. And it wasn't really until the last 2 years of my drinking — alcohol was my main poison, although drugs were part of my story as well — it wasn't really until the last 2 years that my life started to become unmanageable. And, you know, that really led me up to that point where I just had to put my hands up and say, I need help, because by that time I was drinking against my will. I'd lost the power of choice, and I'd lost who I was in all of that. You know, I was quite a confident, bubbly human. You know, growing up, I really loved life, and that all but fell away by the time I rode my train to the end of the line. It was pretty grim at the end of the day, but you know, I'm also so grateful for that, because it needed to get that bad for me to realize that, number one, I needed help, but number two, that I was the problem. And what I mean by that is I was in such denial about my behavior and my drinking and my relationship with alcohol and other substances that I could rationalize and justify my behavior till the cows came home. And I would also blame everything and everyone else around me for my behavior. So my ex-husband, we were married when I got sober. We're no longer married, but he was a heavy weed smoker, and he doesn't mind me sharing this. We've spoken about this, and he's okay with me sharing this part of his story. He's clean 2 years now, which is incredible. But he was a heavy weed smoker, and I was drinking every day. And I would always blame the fact that he was smoking weed as to the reason why I was drinking alcohol. Like, I could never just own it. And every time I blamed someone else, what I was doing, Ron, was I was giving my power away. Because if it was somebody else's fault, then I was pretty, I don't know if you can swear on this show, but I was pretty effed, because
You can do it. Yeah.
Great. This is pretty fucked, because, you know, I can't control his behavior. I can't control him.
Yeah.
But what happened when I had that moment of realization was that what I meant by I was the problem was it was actually really empowering to have that realization, because when I finally stopped blaming everyone else and everything around me, I realized that I could make a change, but it was going to require, me to take the action. No one else could do this for me. And that's really what led me to make that decision to check myself into rehab. I went to a rehab up in Sydney on the Northern Beaches there. And that was the day that I never picked up a drink or a drug since. So it worked, which is amazing. Very, very grateful.
Yeah, it works if you work it.
That's it.
Yeah. I love what you've said already, like I took responsibility, because the reality is 99% of our problem is denial.
Oh, yes.
I'm okay. It wasn't my fault. If this hadn't have happened, it's a justification. Even, a lot of people now, to my, God, I feel like a dinosaur. To my dismay is how they're trying to say these other ways, and there are other ways of getting clean, but not for me. I'm a 12-stepper.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing it for 43 years. I've been in 12-step programs. I'm 38 years clean. I don't know other people that used other ways that have been clean as long as I am, but have had the lifestyle that I have. It's about lifestyle. It's not about being abstinent. We hear the term dry drunk. There's lots of those getting around, people that don't work a program, and they're horribly angry and resentful, and everyone's an arsehole, and they still hate their partner, and they work in a job they hate, and their kids are arseholes. Come on. This is about changing. This is about, this is about
I
being a good
completely
human
agree.
being.
Yeah, I think part of the
It's
reason
about
I was
being a
so
good human being.
afraid I was so afraid to get sober, because I thought that I was going to be signing myself up to a life of misery. I thought, how painful is it going to be to want to drink every single day and not be able to? That's what I thought sobriety was going to look like. But it's nothing like that. For me, I also have a program in my life, and I've been attending 12-step meetings since I went into rehab. I actually did go to a couple of meetings prior to that, because I have my dad, who's been in recovery for coming on, I think he's been around for 14 years now. And so I had him leading the way, which was really comforting. I'd get to this point where I'd burn my life to the ground, and I'd call my dad, and he'd take me to a meeting. But they say you've got to be ready, and I just don't think I was ready at the time. I would sit in a meeting and really not absorb much at all. I think I had cotton wool in my ears, or maybe I was just so consumed with self, that everyone was looking at me, that, what would people think? Like, the reality is no one knew who I was, nor did they care. But, you're so consumed with self in those early days, or when you're still out there and active. And so I would sit there thinking, oh my goodness, I don't want to be here. And then I'd leave the meeting and I'd go and drink. So, when I was introduced to 12-step, when I was in rehab, I think it was around 10 days in that the penny dropped for me, because I think it was enough time for, I hadn't had any alcohol or drugs in my system for about 10 days. And I started to get just a little bit of clarity. It's like the fog started to lift. And that's when the message was able to really drop in and land for me. And I remember I was in a women's meeting on the Northern Beaches, and the first time I identified saying, hi, my name's Ash, so on and so forth, and I actually believed it to be true. And that was a real spiritual experience for me, because in that moment, I finally had hope. Up until that point, like I said, I took myself to rehab because I didn't want to die, but I also didn't want to get sober. And, I just kind of resigned to the fact that I was going to live a really miserable life, that my life was over at the age of 32. And then it was in that meeting, in that moment, that I realized not only could I be sober, but I could be happy, because there was a solution in those rooms. And when I looked around and looked at all the other women there, they looked happy. They had these big, beautiful lives. And I thought, well, if it can work for them, it can work for me too. So, I've been really diligent in staying close to my meetings and to my program and to my sponsor from the minute I left rehab. And that's been a huge reason why I think that I have, God willing, not had relapse as part of my story, and God willing, never will, because I
Yeah.
continue to show up and I continue to do the things. I have a home group, I have a service position. I was there last night, and my community are sober people as well these days, which again, I never thought that would be my reality. Funnily enough, Ron, if you put the dates together, you'll realize that when I came out of rehab, about 7 days later, we went into our very first lockdown. And so what that meant for me was that I actually got sober on Zoom for that first 12 months. I
Yep.
didn't have any face-to-face meetings, and it's pretty hard to, I know it's doable, but it was pretty hard to build connection on in a Zoom room. And so I know, they'd have breakout meetings after the meeting, and I'd always just get off and run away and go back to my life because I was so scared of people. I didn't want you to see me, and I didn't want to be vulnerable. I wasn't ready to. And I had sort of told myself, again, this story, because I'm great at telling myself stories that have no basis for any foundation of truth or reality. But I would tell myself, I'm going to go to these meetings because I need to stay sober, but I'm never going to have any friends here. I can see everyone else getting along, but that's, like I'm the odd one out. I'm never going to have friends. And then a year into my recovery, I actually moved from Sydney back to Melbourne, which is my hometown, and the world started to open up again, and I started to go to face-to-face meetings, and I ended up making a women's meeting my home group. And it was the best decision I ever made, because that particular meeting had a first half. So we'd grab dinner before the meeting, and then we'd roll into the meeting. And, I started to make friends in recovery. And that was a huge turning point for me, because all of a sudden that sense of connection was enhanced. But also, when you've got friends that are sober, you don't feel alone, and there's also nowhere to hide. Like, there's that beautiful sense of accountability when you've got people who are sober, who care for you, because like I said, I can lie to myself really easily, but my sober friends can read me better than I can read myself. So there's so many benefits to, building that side of that triangle. I find that, when we talk about the recovery triangle and working all sides equally, having that sense of connection, that fellowship, was huge for me in wanting to actually stay sober and enjoy my sobriety, rather than feeling isolated or alone or having to white knuckle it.
Yeah. Look, my best friends today are the people I got clean with 40 something years ago. And it's funny, I relapsed in 1986, 85, I relapsed in 1985. God love it. I think before you were born. And it was before you were born. I know it was before you were born. And we went out for dinner a couple of weeks ago. I went down to Sydney for another convention, and there was four of us at the dinner table. My sponsor, my best buddy that I used with and got clean with, and another really good friend of ours. We'd all used together basically back in the 70s, and I was the newcomer at 38 years clean. I was the newcomer, and all the rest were 40, 42, 45 years clean. And they were sort of teasing me about being the newcomer and telling me, keep coming back, mate. If you need any help, just ring us up, arseholes. Yeah. But, we've been mates for 40 something years. 40 something years. I had no friends when I came to recovery. I'd burnt all those friends, and I'd killed all the relationships, and I was so toxic. And today I've still got the, today I've been getting messages from those friends. This morning I'm getting messages from those friends from 40 years ago. And a quick story, one of the guys that sent me the message this morning, he's 40 years clean. And 40 years ago, I'd been clean 30 months, and I was helping him. And then I relapsed. And when I came back, I went and stayed at his house and slept on the floor. And he was 2 years clean. And I detoxed on his lounge room floor. And his wife was pregnant, and she had a child who's 20 days younger than my recovery date, and I'm her godfather.
Oh,
so
wow.
she turned 38 this year, and I went down the other day to his mum's funeral, which is, she was 80-something, fair age. But, this is the connections we have. This is what people miss out on when they go, oh, you don't need 12-step, you don't need this, you don't need that. Well, you need community. I believe people who are wrapped up in themselves make small parcels.
Oh, I love that. That's so true. Yeah.
It is.
And like when Wait, I'd love to know, Ron, like tell me what precipitated that relapse for you? Like if you were you right in the middle at the time, or were you kind of doing your own thing?
I was doing my own thing. I was going to meetings, but I wasn't working the steps. I had
Mm.
a sponsor who didn't have a sponsor. I was in a relationship
Mm.
with a girl in the fellowship
Mm-hmm.
who I'd met in rehab, and we had children. We had twins. We had twins who were 2 years of age, and she'd left me because I was an arsehole. No other reason, because I'm in early recovery and I'm completely mad not working a program. And she left me, and I used with the intention, basically, I'll show you. Look what you've done to me. I was a victim,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
but I also was so ignorant that I thought I could try my using because I had 5 years of information. I thought I could have a weekend of using, then come back and go, okay, I'm Ron, 1 day clean. Who cares? It didn't happen like that. It took 5 months to get back. It was horrible. It was horrific.
Mm.
Worst
Wow.
5 months of my whole life. It was worse than being in prison. People say to me, what's the worst prison you've ever been in? I say active addiction.
Yeah, totally.
Active addiction, because it's all up in here. You can't escape that one until you get help, until you own the prison and say, I don't know, I'm wrong, I need help. Then the recovery process starts.
Mm.
And as you said, I know that you give away a lot. I know that you talk a lot about your recovery. And I believe we need to recover out loud so that people don't suffer in silence.
Mm.
You know,
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. When I had my podcast Behind the Smile, that's exactly what I used to say at the end of every episode. When we recover loudly, no one needs suffer in silence. And yet there's so much stigma still around talking about addiction, which just blows my mind because addiction is everywhere. If you're not addicted to a substance, you're addicted to your phone, you're addicted to your partner, food, shopping, whatever it is. We all have something that we're using, probably to an unhealthy degree, that is a result of wanting to check out of life. Life can be really painful, and I think the more we can just normalize these conversations, the more that people can see themselves in others and look to get the help that they so deserve. But so many people don't reach out for help because they're so ashamed, because they think they're a failure, when the reality is, I love the line where it says, we're not bad people, we're sick people. And what we're looking to do
yeah,
is get well.
yeah. We're not bad people trying to be good. We're sick people trying to get well.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what we are. I say it all the time. I'm a human being first, I'm a man second, and I'm an addict third.
Mm.
Don't get me confused with just being an addict. You're only looking at the
Mm.
addict side of me. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a productive member of society these days. I'm no longer harming people in any way.
Mm.
The program that I've been given freely has changed a person who was indoctrinated with the most horrible upbringing you could even believe in. I don't know. I wrote a book when I was in prison, and I published it last year. And when people read it, they can't believe that I'm the same person. They go like, "Are you serious?" Okay, yeah, that's where I came from, but that's not who I am today.
Mm. Mm.
You know,
I'd love to know, sorry, I keep asking you questions. What's your experience been? Because 38 years is such a long, long time. And I know when I speak to people who are further down the track than me, they say that recovery can have, it almost moves in like 5-year cycles where you can have these emotional bottoms even when you're sober. And it's happened to some people who are really close to me. And, I'm 4 years, so I feel like I'm coming up to that first
yeah.
cycle and I'm a bit nervous. Have you had that same experience?
Yes and no. At 5 years, some people start to think they know it all. They've got all the
Mm-hmm.
answers. At 10 years, some people tend to isolate. They're too busy. They've got too much happening now. Their company's working, their wife, their children, their family, whatever, husband, whatever. It's all happening. So they're getting too busy now. The biggest common denominator with relapse is stopping the connection. Stop going to meetings. Stop working the steps. I've had the same sponsor for 38 years.
Wow.
We still speak we still speak weekly. We don't talk about much. We don't, "Hey, mate, how you doing? Good. How are the kids? Good. How are your kids? Good." It's not, drama. And I don't have a lot of drama. I don't have a lot of, don't get me wrong, I have issues. I have some medical issues that are really nasty at the moment, but they're not dramas. Only if I make it a drama. I have a higher power that loves me, understands me, and guides me. And that's the biggest thing I can have.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That was dropped.
It is that connection piece.
Yeah, it is. We've got to have connection. We've got to have connection with self, a higher power, and another human being. They say it in NA, the therapeutic value of one addict helping another is without parallel. That's a massive, massive thing to say.
Oh, absolutely. I know for me that if I'm not feeling great within myself, the minute I spend some time talking to a sponsee, or I reach out and I connect with my sponsor, or get to myself to a meeting, one of the three, like that state of discontent that I find myself in shifts very quickly.
Yeah, look, I get phone calls from a lot of parents because, guys and girls that I treat, that I work in my program with, their parents usually ring me up. And in the end, half the time you find out the parents are the problem.
Yeah.
The children have the addiction, but the parents are the problem, And I get a phone call yesterday from a guy, and I talked to him for 10 minutes, and he goes, "It's funny, after I talk to you for 10 minutes, I feel better." It's a human being connection. It's not just addicts. Don't get me wrong. He'll have his own crosses to bear with his drink, or he'll have other things that are causing him harm. But it's funny. He says to me, I ring you up because after 10 minutes I feel better, and I feel like saying to him, "Go to a meeting."
Yeah.
Go to a meeting. He goes sometimes with his son, and we could all do with going to meetings. The world would be a better place.
I agree. It's funny. I was talking to somebody. I actually went up to Sydney recently because I had an amends that I needed to make. And, I was sharing with these two people about my life now today and what the program has done for me and the steps. And she said to me, "Oh, I wish that I could do the steps. I wish somebody could take me through the 12 steps." Now, she does not qualify for the program that I'm in. But, and look, I know that there's hundreds of 12-step communities around, whether it's, CODA or SLA or GA, or, there's so many. I don't know if she qualifies for any, to be honest. She's a true blue normie. But it's so true. It's like they say, it's a design for living, and everybody would benefit from going through the process of doing the steps and living in 10, 11, and 12. That's where we get to be decent human beings, right?
Yep. Look, my ex-wife, who's a beautiful human being, she used to say to me, "I'm so jealous. You have this incredible program. You have this network of people." She goes, "When I'm down, I don't have all these friends to talk to." She was an American, and she used to say to me, "I'm so jealous. You've got this incredible program." She was living in Australia. She had no family or friends here, really. So she was stuck with me, and I had this network of people, and it's true. I believe that we are blessed.
What about Al-Anon? Would she have ever tried that?
No, she didn't even want to. No. She didn't want to know about that stuff. She was quite funny. Yeah. She took ecstasy and went to a NA convention party, and everyone said, "Oh God, your wife's so funny. She's so lovely." She was dancing.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Right.
I know, it's crazy. It's crazy, but the funny part is she's not an addict, She thought that she could take a little helper to help her relax around people she didn't know and have a little party at the NA party. It's quite funny. And when she told me, I said, "Are you serious?" Yeah. She told me that night when we went home. She goes, "Oh, I took an ecstasy tablet." I said, "You serious?" Because we used to travel around the world. We go to Amsterdam and, see, I don't care what she did or what anyone else does. It doesn't affect me. I'd never be in a room with someone shooting up or things like that. And I don't even know what ecstasy is as far as the effects of it because it wasn't even around when I was in active addiction. All these drugs now weren't even around, Fanta, G, this, that. It's like, come on, guys. I I had the privilege of treating a 17-year-old young fellow a few years ago, and he had to teach me the language
Yeah,
about trap
right.
house, bricks, all that stuff. And then, we used to laugh, because then I'd start talking to him and I'd say, yeah, you stay away from the trap houses, man. And he used to laugh his head off, I'd say, you've been getting any bricks lately there, boy? And he'd start laughing. You know, I'm 70 in 6 months' time, and he was
Oh, wow.
17. And you know what? He stayed clean and he's still clean. And I said to him when I first started working with him, he was 6'1" and weighed 40 kilos.
Oh, my
He was dying.
goodness.
He was dying on ice and Xanax. He was dying on those things.
Fuck.
And I said, what would you love to do if you could do it? And he said, I'd like to play. He played AFL. His father was a coach and his brothers were both footballers. He said, I'd love to play with my brothers, one game in the seniors. Well, last year I presented him his jumper and he played with his brothers and he won the
Oh,
grand final.
wow. Oh, Ron, that's
See,
amazing.
that's the stuff
It,
why we do what we do.
yeah, the miracles.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I do this job. This is why I do this podcast. I don't do this podcast for any reason but to carry a message of hope that we do recover, that you too can recover if you're prepared to put in the work.
That's
But
right.
first you have to own it.
Yeah, I think, like I said, it took me a little while. Like I went to a handful of meetings over the course of 10 years and just wasn't ready to listen. And when I finally had that moment where I stopped blaming everyone else and, just took ownership for my life and the position I was in. And I just became, one thing I'm so grateful for, Ron, is that I have always, from that day, I became willing. And my willingness has never wavered. And I think, again, that's one of the big key reasons why I'm still sober because, when my sponsor tells me to jump, like I just say how high, and when I see people coming in to the rooms and they start questioning the steps, they're questioning the God word, they've got an issue with this and that, I think to myself, fuck, I feel really bad for you because this is going to be really hard. Like recovery is hard either way, but you can make it a lot harder for yourself if you think that you have the answers. Like the reality is, if you had the answers, you wouldn't be here. So, like, just to be able to sit down, shut up, and take direction, I think, keeps you in a good position for those first couple of years at least, while the fog is lifting.
Yeah. 100%. I used to love what they say. You have two ears and a mouth and one mouth for a reason.
Yes.
Take the cotton wool out of your ears and stick it in your mouth,
Yeah, exactly right. Use them accordingly.
Yeah. People say, I don't know what to say. I say, good, don't say anything. You're here to listen. You're not here to teach. You know what I mean?
Well, you'd probably know this better than me, but I've heard stories that back in the day you weren't allowed to share in your first 12 months.
In the early days, they never asked you to share. Never used to.
Yeah.
In America, you don't get asked to share. You've got to put your hand up.
I have seen that.
They don't ask you to share. Yeah. And usually, because I lived in the States, I was married to an American lady, and I lived in the States for many years. And, the reason I used to get asked to share is because I was from Australia, and they always ask at the beginning of the meeting, is there any people from out of town? You go, yeah. So I would always get a run. But I met people over there that had been to meetings for 3 and 5 years and never shared.
Wow.
I couldn't do that. I need to share. But there's a big thing after the meetings, to share the second half.
Yeah, I think it's so important to share. Like I was taught to share even when you don't want to, and that there's no reason you would ever decline to share. And again, like I said, I've taken the direction really seriously. And so, there are so many meetings where I sit there and I think to myself, please don't ask me, please don't ask me, please don't ask me. And then you get picked to share because, your higher power is always working in your life. Well, it certainly is in mine. And that's when I get up and stuff comes out of my mouth that I didn't even know I was sitting on, that I feel so much lighter when I can get it off my chest. But, if I had to put my hand up, I don't know how often I would, to be honest. I'd probably sit there listening more than I ever did share.
Yeah, I was forced to share because I wouldn't talk. So when I first got clean in 1981, in the rehab I was in would make me share every week because I was so uncomfortable. And I used to sweat and I used to swear and I used to stuff, but I had nothing to share about. I had nothing to talk about. I had no life. I'd grown up in prisons and institutions. So, people didn't want to hear me up there swearing, talking about prisons and institutions. But that's all I had, And today, very rarely do I go to a meeting where I get asked to open it or close it because of my experience. And sometimes I do exactly what you do. I think, no, don't ask me, don't ask me, don't ask me, don't ask me, And then they don't ask me. I think, why didn't they ask me? No.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Got to go home and do a step 4 on it.
I had a sponsor. He asked me one day. He said, and he had about 10 or 15 years clean time up, and he's a beautiful guy, but really, self-centered. He said to me, "How do you handle it when you don't get asked to share?" I said, "Well, it just means that my higher power said I need to listen." And he went, "Oh," because he used to get resentment. If he didn't get asked to share, he'd get resentful. And I say, "Mate, it just means your higher power doesn't think you've got nothing to say. Maybe your higher power just wants you to listen tonight." And that's exactly how I adopt it. If I don't get asked to share, my higher power thinks I need to listen. I love the 12-step program. There's a lot of movements at the moment trying to bag 12-step programs and, how can you say you're an alcoholic or an addict and now you're labeling yourself, you're putting yourself down. Like, it's a trend. Tell me in 30 years all this rubbish. It's a trend. I call them snake oil sellers. They're up there trying to social media and, I've treated thousands of people. You've been clean 3 years. How have you treated thousands of people? I've been clean for 40 years and, like, come on, let's get back to basics. It's not a competition. It's not a pissing competition. This is life and death. People die from this disease every single day. And then they dispute the disease. Well, are you at ease with yourself? No, so you're not at ease. No, so you're at dis-ease. Oh, what? I said, okay, that's what it means. It doesn't mean a medical term, dis-ease. And I say all the time, you don't have a drinking problem, you have a thinking problem. Because once you put down the drink, that's when the shit hits the fan.
Exactly right.
Yeah. And that's for me. For me, I know that my thinking is still out of whack, even after all these years. Not often. I had a really funny episode last year, halfway through last year. It's really funny. I was 37 years clean. My wife and I, we have a 4-year-old who she was 3 at the time, who was a little monster, little snot. She was really, really hard work. And I've got an 8-year-old and my wife's not in the fellowship. And my wife was really upset. And my little girl was being really awful. And my wife swore at her. And I said, "Stop, don't swear at her." And she said, "Well, you look after her." And me being the idiot, went back to old default and said, "Wait a minute, that's not my job." And as soon as I said it, I seen her face and I'm like, bullshit, wrong. So I go away and I ring my sponsor. I always talk to my sponsor because I don't trust my thinking. I run it past him, he lets me talk. I tell him the whole story, don't leave bits off, don't add bits on, tell it how it is. And at the end of the story, he says, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "What?" He goes, "You're so far out of left field, it's not funny." I'm like, "What?" Because I'm thinking I'm right. He said, "Mate, you were so wrong. Go back in and make amends." And I go back into my wife and said, "Look," and when he said it to me, I thought about it and I thought, wow, after all these years, because my wife and I never, ever, it's crazy. We've been together 12 years. We never fight. I think we've had 2 fights in 12 years and both of them were my fault, my own insecurities. Both of them were jealousies. Both of them were my issues, honestly. Both of them were my issues. And I take full responsibility. And when I said to him, I told him what happened, he just said, "Mate, you're wrong. Go and make amends." And so what the whole moral of that story is, no matter how long you've been clean, I still have a thinking problem. And I still have to be vigilant.
Yeah. I really relate to that in the sense of, It was just last
So
week. I was
what are you
actually
doing these
driving
days?
to a
What's
meeting with
your
my partner. So my he's also
passion
sober.
today?
Oh, sorry, what was that?
Sorry, Don? No, what was you
Sorry,
saying then?
think we had a delay. I was just saying, Ron, how it was just last Sunday. I was in the car driving to a meeting with my partner. He's also in the rooms, and I was sitting there, and I caught myself doing an internal head scan, trying to poke holes in my life. And what I mean by that is I was looking for anywhere in my mind where things weren't good enough. Like I was going through I had a crazy week last week. It was incredible. I did a TEDx talk which came out. I had some really great wins inside my business. I announced that I was finishing up the podcast. Like there was a lot of really exciting stuff happening in my world. And yet my alcoholic thinking was to sit there and just try to find anything that was wrong. And, I'm so lucky, like, as I said, my partner's in recovery, so I can talk to him about this stuff, and he really gets it. And he said, Ash, it sounds like you might have a bit of spiritual depression, which Bob Darrell talks about all the time. He does some brilliant speaker tapes on this. It's this idea of like, when I don't stay connected to my higher power, I can so easily fall back into that negative thinking because my solution to that used to be alcohol. I've removed the alcohol. If I'm not staying committed to a program and doing the stuff that I need to do, then that, like, my mind can tick into that so quickly. And then if I'm not vigilant, like you said, the thought of a drink or a drug to ease that dis-ease becomes really appealing really quickly.
Yep. Default. It's they say, it can never be cured. However, it can be arrested on a daily basis. And that's what we have to do. It's a daily program. I just had more practice at doing it. And like everything, the more you practice, the easier it gets. It's that simple.
Yeah.
But I'm still one drink away from being a drunk. I'm still one drink away from being a drunk. If you and I go out today and we get drunk, guess what? We're both going to be messy by Friday. It's Friday. We're messy today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We'll be messy by this afternoon. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Totally.
We're messy today. That's it, I say to people go like, oh, do you ever think about using? I say, no, I don't. I think about killing myself. I think about destroying my relationships. I think about destroying my family, my friendships, my companies. I think about just burning everything to the ground. Then I would drink. The insidious disease says, let's destroy everything so you've got nothing to lose. Then when you've got nothing, you may as well have a drink. And to me, when I drink, I break out in track marks. As soon as I start drinking, I break out in track marks and handcuffs. So, no. Yeah. So what are you doing with yourself today? What are you doing? What's Ash doing today? What are you doing in your life?
Yeah, so in the last 4 years, my life has changed a lot. I actually was in the corporate beauty world for 15 years of my career. And then when I got sober, I actually went and retrained as a yoga and a meditation teacher. And so the last couple of years, I've actually been combining all of my experience to help guide and coach people. So I started the podcast Behind the Smile because I had this real desire to want to do exactly what you're doing, Ron, which is change the conversation around really removing the stigma around mental health, trauma, and addiction. And so I did that for about 18 months. And then, one thing that I really love is that the longer I stay sober, the more clear I get on who I am as a person and how I want to serve. And what I found was I was getting some really amazing traction with my clients who I was mentoring. And so I've decided to really lean into that space and to open up another program. So what I'm doing now is actually helping people experience a full transformation. So I call myself the Makeover Mentor. And what I do is I guide people through a physical, an emotional, and a spiritual makeover. So not necessarily people in recovery. I was helping a lot of people in recovery when I had the podcast. But what I really found was that I think most people are walking through life with some sort of disconnection, with some sort of dis-ease. And so what I'm really looking to do is to want to serve people whether or not you're in recovery, because I think we could all do with diving a little deeper into those elements of our life, the physical transformation, really actually taking care of our incredible bodies and nurturing and nourishing ourselves. And then there's the emotional transformation which takes place, which is helping to work on that negative thinking, that inner critic, practicing self-love, really creating a sense of harmony within ourselves, because I think we can so often be so cruel to ourselves in the way that we talk to ourselves, really helping people to reframe that and to rewire their neural pathways a lot of the time when we look at that emotional stuff, that psychological stuff. And then the spiritual side, which is something that has become deeply embedded in my life over the last few years, since getting sober, since retraining as a yoga and a meditation teacher. I think some people what I see time and time again is, people will get to a point of burnout, and then so they'll go and check themselves into a 7-day retreat to de-stress, to unwind. Now that's all good and well, but the reality is if you're not given the tools to be able to implement into a daily practice, then you'll come out of that, you'll go back into your normal life, and then you'll be hit with the same stresses, the same anxiety, and you'll end up feeling probably worse than you did before you left. So what I help people to do is to work through those blocks and to start implementing those beautiful daily practices so that they can enhance that spiritual side of their life as well. So yeah, I work with people over a period of 12 months, and the transformations are just incredible. It's a deep, deep honor to be able to do this work.
Yeah, beautiful. I have a few friends who do similar stuff, but they're coming from a different angle, but it's the same thing as mental, physical, and spiritual.
Yes, exactly.
As I said to you before, I'm a man, I'm a human being, I'm a man, I'm an addict. So everything's threefold to me. It's a threefold disease, mental, physical, and spiritual, So I have to treat all three areas. I can't just, I see a lot of people get into recovery and they go to the gym and they'll get on the roids and they'll pump up, and then they've got roid rage and, they're crazy and, it's everything. And the more they get on that, they become more self-centered. That's that small parcel syndrome I talk about. The spiritual part of my disease is the total self-centeredness. So if I've got to get out and help other people and serve, the word you used, which I use a lot, serve. I'm here to serve people. That's what my job is. My job is my legacy in this world, I don't want to be known as Ron the ex-criminal junkie, whatever. I want to be known as Ron the guy who tried to help people. That's my legacy. My legacy is now to carry a message of hope and happiness, and also love and joy, because, John Lennon said a long time ago, all you need is love. The thing I didn't do when I used was love myself.
Yeah.
And I tried to destroy myself. Today, I love myself so much that I would never harm myself again. Because I believe using self-harm. Drinking and drugging is a form of self-abuse.
Yep, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
It's a form.
Yeah,
it's the same as doing that. It's the same as it's an internal slash up. And that voice you talk about, I talk about that all the time. On my business card, it says transformation coach. It says nothing about drug and alcohol. I try to transform people's thinking. You
exactly
don't
right,
need
because it all starts in the head. Yeah, exactly.
You don't need it. People say to me, how do I let go? And I say to them, hold a pen. Just hold a pen. So now let go. And they go, oh. And I say, what did you do? They say, I let go. I said, but how? And they go, what do you mean? I said, you made a decision in your mind to open your fingers. You made the decision. Your hand didn't make the decision. Your mind made the decision. So where does it have to come from? It has to come from your mind. And they go like, oh, okay, I'm starting to get this now. I'm now responsible. I've got control of whether I open my hand or not. Because I can sit there all day and say, drop, 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 and that pen won't fall. The minute you make the decision and put the action in, is the big word, action, we now have movement. Once we have movement, we're on our road to recovery. They call it a road for a reason. It's about movement. They say it's a progressive disease. Guess what? You have to stay one step in front of it. Because that's what happens with you. The question you asked about 4, 5, 10 years, people become stagnant. The disease catches up.
Right,
so as long as you stay in front of the disease, I do it on a board, on a whiteboard. I do a graph sometimes, and I put down the disease of addiction, and it's a progressive disease. So if progression means movement, how do you stay in front of it? One step at a time. What steps? There's 12 steps there. Oh, now this I'm starting to understand how this program works. Because I'm really, I'm blessed to have been around a long time. The first step tells me I cannot drink alcohol and have a good life. It doesn't say I can't drink alcohol. It says I can't drink alcohol and have a good life. And the second step tells me if I think I can, I'm mad. And the third step tells me if I'm mad, I need to talk to somebody who isn't. That's the first 3 steps. I know it sounds simple, but that is the first 3 steps.
That's brilliant. I love the simplified version.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my simplified version of the first 3 steps. Yeah. I cannot take a drink or a drug and have a good life. I can take a drink or a drug. I know where there's a pub down the road. Of course I can. See, I think the greatest problem with a lot of people, especially rehabs and things like that, they say, you can't drink, you can't do that. You tell him that he can't do something, first thing he wants to do is do it because we're defiant.
Yeah.
We're rebellious
So true.
and we're defiant and we're also self-sabotaging. So I say, no, you can drink, but if you drink, you lose your wife, you lose your job, you lose your family, you lose self-respect, you lose your dignity. Is it worth it? Now you've got a choice. It's your responsibility. Take responsibility. Which one do you want? So it's not rocket science. I used to get told a long time ago, it's a simple program for complicated people.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that one. It's so true. It's so true. The less you question it, the easier it is.
Yeah. So the simpler I make my program, the easier it is for me to do. And it gives me more time to enjoy the fruits of my labour. Because I'm all about feeling good. I like to feel good. That's why I drank and I drugged, because I felt bad, so I wanted to change the way I felt. Today I feel good because I have this incredible life that's way beyond my wildest dreams. I was a street kid from Fitzroy. My father was a gangster. I'm a published author. I'm actually a decent human being. I'm a good husband. I'm a good father. I'm a good friend. And I actually care about the world, which is nice. I care about society, even though I think, I'm not going to get into the politics of what I think is going on in the world today, because I can't change the world, but what I can do is change me.
Exactly.
And by changing me, I can try to help change somebody else. Now, because my whole purpose in life is to serve. Because when I was drinking and drugging, I was a human taking. Now I'm a human being. I want to be a human being. I'm sick of taking.
Well, I think you're certainly doing that,
Ron.
Ron.
We're doing our best. And Ash, honestly, I could sit here and talk to you all day. It's been such a pleasure. Such a beautiful smile face. It's such a pleasure to see someone bubbling. Look, I see recovery. When I look at you, I see recovery.
Yeah.
I don't see someone who's a dry drunk. I see someone who's living their best life. Hey, it's scary and you'll have moments, but you know what? You're in good hands. Trust the situation that you're in. You're going to do what you need to do. And I really appreciate you coming on The Truth About Addiction. I'll catch up with you in another 12 months or something. We'll do it again. We'll see where you're at. We'll do a progress report.
I'd love to, Ron. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's been such a pleasure.
I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.